you mentioned that you take probiotics, and it's one of the changes or one of the things that you've been doing to weather the storm of COVID. And Brian is asking, there's a suggestion in the literature that taking probiotics may actually narrow the diversity of the microbiota. And so he's asking for your opinion on this.
There's certainly indication of both. I take some strain of probiotics, using them as seeds, that then I go feed with the prebiotics, which is my diet. Because sometimes, you know, when I do gut analysis, you find people that their microbiome is really almost devoid of the type of strains that you want to have in there. So putting them back, it's probably not a bad idea. And you follow the person very closely, because I've had my share of people that went on probiotics and actually felt worse. But it all depends on where you are. And, you know, we can find out, of course, you know, you have to go through the expense of the test, and then going through it and sitting down and, you know, describing to the person what it is that they have or don't have. But in the general scheme of things, you know, I take a few probiotics, you know, 2-3 times a week, especially, you know, with the times that we're going through.
Really I would just jump in there and say that intermittent use of the probiotics, once somebody's in a stable state, is something that we do a lot. That, you know, oftentimes, you know, people come in and they're in a physiologically distressed state. And so there might be a regimen for a while that includes the probiotics, but then the intermittent use of them, once somebody's in a stable state, and we know that they're getting the prebiotics in their diet, and that's then even the more important once somebody is in a pretty stable state, is to continuously be feeding those bacteria. Because what happens if we don't, and you know, Dr. Bazzan gave a grand rounds once. I wish I could pull up this the slide of the mucopolysaccharide layer of the gut, which you know, what this showed was that when we are not sort of feeding those bacteria, they begin to eat us. They begin to feed off of that mucopolysaccharide layer. And so when people have all of this gastric distress, a lot of times it's because they're not getting any of that good fiber that they need in the diet. And this is kind of a typical phenomena where people are eating diets devoid of that plant starch, that plant fiber that the good bacteria feeds on. So back to the diet being critical, sometimes probiotics make a lot of sense, and sometimes they make a lot of sense to use rather you know, intensely for a period of time. But without the food for those bacteria, that doesn't make so much sense. And then over time, the prebiotics really, and I think that an NIH consensus panel that recently really looked at this, what over time really makes a lot of sense is to focus on prebiotics.
I totally agree. And I love that you emphasize continuous feeding of the good bugs with prebiotics, and then pulses of probiotics. I think that's a really evidence-based way to be thinking about this.